Hello, my name is Jerome and welcome to my RC construction station. Today I'm going to work on my Volvo E160E electric excavator. And the reason I'm working on this one today is I seriously want to do a conversion kit to turn this hydraulic instead of being electric. But one problem is all of the play in the slew rings, and there's a lot of play in this. So I found online they have a kit, which is this right here, and this ring goes underneath the mount where the slew ring is at, and I'm going to show the installation of this today to see if it makes any difference. For the motor that spins the top of this around, there's a gear on that motor. I think the gear has worn down, which puts a lot of play in this. So if I can overcome these issues, I'm going to buy the hydraulic kit and convert this. And I will make a video during the conversion. In the meantime, I'm going to do this part right here, and I will try to remember to put in the show notes where I bought this. I actually got it off AliExpress, and I believe it cost under $10, but it's considered to be an upgrade to the slew ring. So let me get started. First thing I'm going to do is take off this body. And as you can see with my Volvo, it's just full of ESCs. Big arm motor, small arm motor, right track, turntable, left track. I took out all of their electronics because they were just so poor, the thing was broken all the time. And I put a Fly Sky receiver in here, and I set it up to work with this remote control. So actually, nope, I changed it. I set it to work with this remote control right here, so I can run all of my equipment with the same remote control. So as I take this apart, I'm gonna hit pause on the tape frequently so you don't have to spend a lot of time watching me remove screws and things of that nature. But I'll show you all the steps. All right, so actually this is the transmitter that I have set up to work with the Volvo. And I believe, so underneath the excavator, there's 3 screws here that are one size, which is 3mm hex head. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 other screws, which are 2.5mm hex heads. So I'm going to unscrew these screws. Before unscrewing all of these screws, my memory's coming back, I have to remove the tracks off of here. And in order to remove the tracks on the Volvo, there are these little rubber plugs on the side of the rail. Once that plug is removed, let me get this stuff out the way. I can use a screwdriver to remove the tracks. Uh-oh. Well. what happened is these separated because I took the screws out too early. But that's okay. I'm still gonna remove the tracks and show you that. The three larger 3mm screws are the ones that keep this lower chassis connected to the upper chassis. So I'm putting them back in. This is all trial and error. Alright, let's try this again. So with the plug removed from here, I can push on this top roller to relieve the tension. When I push it all the way down, I can put a screwdriver in here and use it to keep the tension locked. And with that, I can just remove the track. Hold the front tension wheel again and pull your screwdriver out. If you don't hold it, once the screwdriver comes out, it's likely that this thing will fly up because there is a spring in here. And then I need to repeat this process on the other side. Now that I have both tracks off, I can continue on separating these parts to put the gear in. My next steps are to remove this cab here by unscrewing 2 screws under the front, and I believe there's 1 screw right in here that will allow this entire cab to come off. So 1 screw here. And 2 screws here. Okay, and at this point, I believe I can just disconnect this battery. Because I don't have to turn the cab anymore. So, in separating, I'm going to pull this turret off, and I'm also going to loosen the bottom, so there'll be this upper piece with the plate, the ring part here, and this. All of these I'm going to separate. And here's where my machine is different from the factory machines. In the factory machines, when you remove this bottom piece, you'll have to unsolder the wires from the motors to get all of this to separate. But since I already modified this, these are my 2 track motors, and I have them set up to just plug in and out. When I separate these, it'll just slide up over these pieces here. But it has 4 screws holding it together. When taking the last screw out, be sure to hold this piece, or it will fall due to the weight of the arm. So this piece I've taken out. So with the play that I have in the slew ring that allows the arm to swivel back and forth when it's not in use, I believe it's due to this gear right here that's on the turret motor. I believe that gear is worn, the teeth are worn down, which is providing a lot of excess play. However, I don't know where to purchase another gear. I see several websites sell the motor that makes the top cab spin around, and all the websites only sell the motor. None of them sell the gear with the motor. So some kind of way I'm gonna have to take the measurements probably today, since I got it open, and try to measure and find a gear that might go to another machine that I can fit on here to get it to work. In addition, for this piece here that I'm putting on to replace, to get the forward backward slop out of it, one thing that I did previously is I took a bunch of washers and like this, and I bent them a little bit and stuffed them down in here, and they absorbed, I thought I had 3, I only see 2. They absorbed a lot of the play from this base moving up and down. So that was my first solution, which worked okay. Let us move on. So now that I have this apart, again, these are wires that go to the motor for the right track and motor for the left track. So I'm going to push these wires through the hole so that I can fully separate these pieces. And with that, I have the arm completely out of the way. So now I will return to the bottom to take these screws out. Initially, I had a very small electric screwdriver that I would use to remove and install these screws. But I found no matter how much I tried, I'd always wind up stripping some. So now I just do it by hand. So now in the separation, I can lift this piece up, and let me show you. Right here is a motor. All right, here's the motor for one track. Over here is a motor for another track. And they will recommend taking the rest of these 4 screws off so this bottom plate falls out, and then you can unsolder the wires on the motor to separate this. But I'm going to try not to do that, but it may not be an option. If you do unsolder the wires, take pictures so you can put the wires back on correctly. So I believe my goal is to get this piece here to slide right in here. And in order to reach that goal, I have to take the 4 screws out of here and also the 3 screws out of here that allows this infinite rotation device to work. So I'll start with the bottom. Prior to me buying my first Cabalite hydraulic excavator, after I modified this one, I played with this thing for at least a year, almost daily. It was pretty awesome once I removed the double E electronics out of here. They were just terrible because they never worked with their electronics. And the tracks that I have on here are actually brand new tracks I got a couple of days before my hydraulic excavator showed up. Alright, so I believe this is going to fit in here. And in order to get it there, I'll have to unscrew this. Ugh. This puts a lot of dirty grease on your fingers. I remember doing this last time. Matter of fact, it's not that easy to wash off. It's just dirty grease. I'm going to go get some latex gloves. Okay, here is the gear for the turret motor that spins the cab around, and all of this play right here in this gear, because the motor shaft is not moving. That's why there's so much play in the boom moving back and forth when it's not actually being activated. And the fact that this gear just slides on and off without me using a gear puller is another indication that this stuff is really worn. But it's a lot of play in here. So I'm going to have to probably try to put something in here to take up some of that slack. In order to try to take up some of this slack, I took a wire, small wire, maybe 22 gauge, and I stripped the insulation off the end and twisted it just so it stays together. And I'm going to see if I could use some of this to try and take up some space. I peel back some of the strands of wire so this is not as big. Put it through the hole. And try to stick it onto the shaft. There we go, there's a flat spot. Alright, so I got it on here and there is zero play in this portion. So I will cut the excess off, shove it back in the motor. Whatever works. It's pretty good. So in order to get this all the way down, I'll use some pliers. It's good enough. So I have the gear back in place, put the little shaft back in, and there is no play, less than 0.5 millimeter. So I may be able to do the hydraulic change after all. So getting that part fixed is great because I expect this to be a lot tighter. However, in order to put this upgrade on here, it's not necessary to take the top half of this off. So this could have stayed together because this ring fits down, it seats down here. So I too am going to have to unsolder these wires from the motor in order to complete this task. So let me work at getting to the bottom of the excavator. I cleaned all of the dirty grease out of the bottom of here and underneath here also. Once I'm reassembling it, I'm gonna put some white lithium grease in here to replace all of that goo. One reason I remember I had to take the tracks off is because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 additional screws that have to be removed in order to get this bottom plate to come off. Once all of the screws are removed, this plate comes off and I have access to the motors in order to desolder the wires. Remember to take pictures so that you are able to put things back exactly the way that they are, so you don't get it together and find out your track motors don't work. There's 3 things I'm going to use when unsoldering these wires. First is a soldering gun. Has a much more power than a soldering iron. It's going to be far easier to get these off with more power because the solder is going to heat up quicker. Here is a smoke extractor so I don't have to breathe the smoke. And most importantly, safety glasses, because when these wires are pulled off, it often will flick the hot solder right into your face, and the last thing you want to do is get it in your eye. I had a friend that happened to at work, and he said it was easily the most painful thing he experienced in his life. I put a L for left, R for right on my motors so that if I get this flipped upside down in the process, I'll know which wires go where. Red and yellow close to the frame, green and black stick out. Turn on my smoke extractor. Let my iron heat up. It's often useful to have this, a solder sucker, to remove some of the solder during the process. I just push this thing down, put the tip of this on there, and when the solder turns liquid, I push this button and it creates a suction to remove some of the solder. Also, it's useful to have some solder to sort of prime the tip, because the liquid solder is what transfers the heat. You're going to want some pliers in order to manipulate the wire. And just let it sit there and give it time. Alright, there we go. One is off. And all the wires are off. Turn off my solder sucker. Get my solder iron out the way so I don't accidentally burn myself. And now this piece is off. So the upgraded gear goes down in here just like that. And before I reassemble it, I'm going to put white lithium grease in here to help make it smooth. And as this piece goes back in, I will put lithium grease on this, which goes on the top of the bearings. That should be real, it's very tight. Get all 4 wires in here. Yes, that's very tight. And I'll screw this back together. I'm now soldering the wires back together. And for this right motor, looking at my picture, red goes back here. Green goes up front. So now I will reassemble. Start by putting this bottom plate on after removing these temporary screws. This here is the hole that the screwdriver is catching in when I push down. don't forget your dust covers so this doesn't fill up with dirt. Oh man, there's zero play in there. Zero. Awesome. All right, now I can put the top back together. First thing I want to do is put these motor wires back through this turret. Just set this down. There is no play at all. This was not this tight when I bought it and got it home out of the box. I like it, so it looks like I will be able to do the hydraulic upgrade. That will be exciting. Personally, I like doing all this stuff, taking things apart, figuring out how they work, and modifying things. So this is not stressful for me. It's enjoyable, especially when I get an idea in my head. Hey, maybe I can do this. I get all ramped up and excited on how I'm going to get this done. But I'm going to reassemble all of this and show you the final product. Okay, I have the top on, and when I go to turn, seems to be really tight. So I'm going to have to put a little, about a 1/2 millimeter of space somewhere in here to relieve some pressure. And that's what I'm figuring out now. So here is the bottom side of the turret, and the motor that makes it spin goes in here. And because that bearing had a thickness, they gave me this rectangular piece of metal to put in here so that the motor goes like this, and this mounts to the excavator. But it can't, because this is circular down here, and there's no room for it up here. And this was one of the major problems why things were rubbing. So I came up with my own little scheme on how to take up all that extra slack. And my solution, these are the screws that hold that motor in, and I have a few nuts. I'm going to place a nut between this mounting plate and the motor in order to take up that extra space. So here's a picture of the nuts that I put on the 4 screws, and those 4 screws will go into the front of this motor to hold it in there. Okay, I have the motor in now, and I measured the distance from the bottom of this plate where this gear was rubbing to the top of this gear right here, and it was 5.58 millimeters. and I measured the distance that this gear is down below this, the mounting plate, and it was 4.9 millimeters. So therefore I got a 0.5 millimeters play between the top of the gear and the bottom of there. And I used a pair of calipers to make those measurements. So now I'm gonna put it back together. Okay, so now I have the machine put back together. Let's test it out. Sounds very smooth. Nothing's rubbing. In addition, there's none of that play in here. This is just the wheels moving down on the cardboard, but there's no play in there. There's still a little bit of play here. However, by everything else being tight, previously when I stopped, it would bounce back and forth. I don't have that bouncing going on. So I'm very satisfied with it. I can proceed with getting the hydraulic upgrade to this. And one thing I'm going to point out, the hydraulic upgrade kit that I'm going to get, this has a boom and a stick and a bucket. It's going to be a 3-arm assembly, so it's going to have a boom, a stick, and there's going to be a 3rd arm in between the boom and the stick. So it's going to be a 3-arm excavator. Never used one before, never seen one used, but that's what the kit is, and that's what I'm going to buy. So I will post a video when I upgrade it and show you how it works. If you like what you saw, click like. I'll try to remember to put a link for this Slew ring in the description. And that's all I got. Have a great day. Peace.